When my brother passed away, this moment came like instantly where it was like time is short. Like I don't have forever. My brother's 35 and he just fucking died and left 3 kids. I don't have forever.
All ready?
All set, man.
Adam, thank you for coming on the podcast. Really grateful and honored for you to be here. You've lived a crazy, crazy life, and I'm excited to dive into some of it today and hopefully come to new understandings about some of the things that have happened.
Yeah, man. I'm stoked. Thank you for having me on.
When did you realize that you were special or different?
There's like 2 scenarios when I was younger. I wouldn't take this Zorro outfit off for weeks. Like it was like, and I carved Z's into everything with a paring knife. And then at the same time, while that's happening and I'm doing these stupid things, I'm also testing so high in state testing scores that they move me up an entire 2 grades, in certain areas and a whole grade in others, So
This is first grade.
no, I was in 3rd grade and I moved up to 4th and then was doing 5th grade math. And I just after this state testing, and they were kind of like just baffled how I could do that because I was not doing well in school. I was just kind of like a C student of sorts, my whole life, but until I got to high school. But ultimately, I always kind of like struggled in the conventional school system because I was far more creative and I lacked a certain filter, like where I was like willing to have hard adult, almost like conversations with adults when you shouldn't be.
Like what?
Or just saying things to people. Like I wouldn't let people talk to me a certain way. I'd never let somebody talk to me like I was a kid. That's something as a father myself that I don't talk to my children like they are kids. I talk to them as they are young adults with, a certain level of filter. And for myself, I think that's always what I just wanted. So that's the place that I provide for them now. And, that's even the system that I want them to be in within school. Like I want them to feel that way when they're at school. And if they ever didn't, I would, find an alternative way to educate them. But ultimately feeling comfortable and confident in speaking your words and believing in them and standing by them and not letting somebody else tell you differently. Because that's what they know, right? But like your knowledge is not my belief. And I've known that since a very young age. I was like the kid they put on Ritalin, at 1st grade. It was like the first generation of let's just get these fucking kids all hopped up on, I think like the equivalent of a dose of Ritalin or Adderall is somewhere around like 500 to 600 milligrams of caffeine. And like that's what they were putting people like me on because they just didn't understand the way my mind worked, which has helped me so much in my life when I just stopped trying to fit in, and I never tried to fit in, but when I was forced to stop fitting in once I was done with school.
And you said there were 2 moments.
Yeah, the 2 moments was getting put up in grades and then failing out of those grades. So all of a sudden I was like stupid again, but like that happened multiple times where like throughout my life, all of a sudden a test would come and I'm not doing well in that class. And I just like ace this test without studying, whatever. And it's just like something about my brain had the answers in it, but like it wasn't until like the risk was high enough or something that I could put it out, or like where I was like in a state of flow, maybe of subconscious, at a young age. Not really 100% sure how it pulled these things off, but happened in like chemistry where it was like, how are you getting these grades? And then you get this on your final. And I'm like, I don't know. It just made sense today.
Yeah, I did, when I studied your story, I did notice that theme a bunch of different times where you would succeed really quickly at something and then get pulled back. Like another example would be the wrestling team.
Yeah.
Where you're the best wrestler on the team, and then you don't show up to practice because you have some headache or some head issue, and then you get mad at the coach because of that. So it's like a common theme that happens in your life. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, in many ways, I would like to not call it a theme so that I don't put it out there or agree with the universe of some sort, but
has it been a pattern though?
There certainly are patterns to, I've generally accelerated at things quickly, and at the same time have had those same things then like pulled away very quickly. And I have come to see it as, just I'm that guy who's always needed extra credit. So maybe these like negative experiences that make me work just a little bit harder, this extra credit is really just, it's for me. It's like when I was younger, I'd be like, why is this always happening to me? And then I was like, when my brother died, that was when I decided to stop looking at it like, why is this happening to me? And this is happening for me. And, no matter what gets pulled away from me, I, in many ways, never believed that you can own anything. So I'm always willing to adapt and change to the new situation. By ownership, I mean obtaining. It's like, it's all finite in the end anyways, right? It's like ownership is just a perception time. So never too attached to the idea of it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What was the first time your father beat you?
Man, I think my earliest memory, my dad had this saying. So there was this like galley kitchen, I think is what they call it, when it's like kind of like a thin alley of sorts, and it's like your refrigerator and your oven and like some countertop is there, and then it's like more countertop is here, and you have this kind of like thin alley. I think it's called like a galley kitchen of some sort. And then it would like bottleneck into like where like the dining room was. And there was like this like little space that like if you couldn't walk through there, you couldn't like get to the rest of the house from like the galley kitchen unless, it was just like this thing. So my dad had this saying, like out of all the fucking places you would stand, the 2,200 square feet, you'd stand right here. And it was that place in that house that was said to me so many fucking times in my life. But the first time I remember it being said to me, he picked me up and he threw me from there into the living room, probably like 8 feet, and just like landed on the carpet. And my dad, just launches me, and my brother my brother's doing the dishes because he's like helping in the kitchen, takes the large carving knife out of the kitchen, goes right up to my dad and puts it into his throat. And he goes, if you ever touch him like that again, I'll fucking kill you. And I'm like seeing this happening, and I'm just like, holy fuck, in my head, and at a young age, I'm like, holy fuck. Like, I'm saying that. Like I literally, that word was in my head already just because like the language at the house. And it wasn't like, it's interesting. It's like, it was like living with a fighter. Not every day are you going to fight, but you don't know when the fight is going to happen. It wasn't like a place of like consistent violence and things like that. My dad would just like lose it one moment because of something, stress, whatever. My room's not clean. Great reason to fucking beat your kid, and I was the short end of the fucking stick. My brother was too big. My brother got I reminded my brother of that story. I was working for my brother like late in my 20s, in my early 20s, and before he passed away. And I like brought up that story, and I thanked him, and I was like, you weren't always there, but like I would really appreciate it when you stepped in. And he's like, Dad beat my ass that night in the middle of the night. Came downstairs into my brother's bedroom, who lived in the basement, and beat the shit. I mean, my brother was like 17, not condoning it, but like he wasn't like a little kid, but still, beat my brother's ass.
So your brother was 17, which means you were 5?
Yeah.
You were 5
He was probably 18 because I was 5. Yeah. So my brother was 13 years old, 12. So yeah, he was 17. Sorry.
So around that.
Yeah.
So 5 years old.
Yeah.
Getting beat by your primary care provider.
Yeah.
And what is the emotion you feel?
My emotions were confusion. I don't know if that's an emotion, but confusion, because like I really love my dad, and I still do. But he would just, and he would know that he did something wrong, because it was always like half hour later, he's like, hey, you want to go get some ice cream? Or, like something like that, right? And that was always, the thing that he would try to get back on like my good side, because like I just wouldn't talk to him. Like I would just like shut down. And, by the age of like, 15, 16, something like that, he probably laid into me at least like, 10 good times, in my life, at least one good one a year, a couple of little ones on the side, like some of them I just escaped, like where it's like, he couldn't catch me, so I just didn't catch an ass whooping. But it was like be for, just stupid shit. And it really like, it came to a screeching halt. I mean, I was very focused on getting strong at the age of 12 years old. And I randomly got this weight set given to me by an uncle who passes away, and a great uncle. And I had this like dream that I wanted to be an action hero, and probably because I just wanted to save myself, and I started just lifting weights just fucking hard every day at a young age. Pretty sure that's why I probably didn't grow as tall as I should have. I'm like the shortest guy in my family. But who knows? But, I one day my dad is downstairs, and he was like, it was either me or the dogs, that the dogs like pissed in the house or something. He was like beating the shit out of the dogs, and my mom's like freaking out, and she's like, Adam, get downstairs. He's going to kill her, and I'm like, I run downstairs, and I'm like, hey, my mom gave me permission, like, go fucking stop Dad from doing this thing. And this was the first time I'd ever been given permission, because my mom just was like completely oblivious to this shit ever happening. She'd be like, where was I? How was it she was always caught up in her own shit. She always took her work home. She was a nurse. She cared a lot. So she always brought her caring home. And it was like, well, you're not caring at home. That's the problem. And we've tried to work that shit out, and we're still trying to work that out. Luckily, we still have some time, I ran downstairs, and I grabbed my dad and fucking pinned him against a wall, broke like 4 stair banisters, like against the stair wall. And my dad was like 6'3", 265 pounds. And then he like tried like coming at me, and I like just, hit him hard, like a chest check, like almost like a lineman, and just boom, and broke the banisters. I mean, and he had this look in his face. He like knew that like something was changing, and I wasn't going to put up with this shit anymore, and it was just like, it was just the idea of just me wanting to protect myself. I think it was a big reason of why I was so infatuated with the idea of becoming so strong.
Mm. And then you said your mom took her work home, meaning that in some sense she didn't have any time for you, or didn't feel like she cared for you. Is that correct?
Well, like, she literally even took her work home. I mean, like, there have been times that I've literally come home to a foster sibling, and because like the system didn't have room for this person, and there's nobody that loves this baby, And then like my mom's taking care of this kid for like 6 months, like a hydrocephalic, like, baby. And, I'm just like, okay, or talking about it at the table, like whatever. Which like I learned a lot. Like I chalk it up now as like, fuck, like I learned a lot. Like I know a lot about the medical system. I know a lot about nursing. I know a lot about these things. I mean, my mom brought home, who now has been my brother for 25 years, my brother Danye, who's a paraplegic. And like all while this is all happening, there's like my brother's addicted to drugs. My sister has an eating disorder. My other sister has a learning disability. And I'm like, hyperactive disorder, super athlete, mediocre student, like just trying to fucking do my things. And then they like bring in like a paralyzed fucking kid into the situation, and it's just like, holy shit, they liked it chaotic because it like makes like, all the other things seem less crazy. It was like how many dogs my parents would have in the house. It was always just kind of like looking back at it. It was a lot of masking things with things.
Let's pile up things and people in our life so we don't have to look at our own problems.
Or too close to our actual family itself, right? If you're always like, oh, this dog is so cute, you're always petting the dog, and like, right, you're not really like putting the energy into your children that need that energy. Or if you're like taking care of a new kid, which I mean, that Danye had to have a family. Somebody had to take care of him. Like, I don't regret that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it would have been nice for my parents to come to sport events.
April 28th, 2000, what happened?
April 28th, 2000. Man, I turned 18. I turned 18, and they didn't show up to a track meet. Yeah, man. It was my fucking birthday, and they didn't even show up to the track meet, They, yeah, it's crazy. I think back at it, and I'm like, I would never miss one of my kids' birthdays. Yeah, let alone one that they're pole vaulting in. Like, I just don't think they understood me and what it is that I was about. And they were just so caught up in their own lives that I try not to fault them for it, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, where it's like, it's been really hard for me to accept birthday gifts for a long time.
Why?
Just because the birthday gifts were the things that they would give me because I didn't get their actual time or their energy. I don't really give a fuck about the gift. I give a shit about the effort, the thought, showing up.
You're 41?
41.
41 years old.
41 young, man. What are you doing? Trying to make me sound old on the internet.
41 years old.
Yes.
And you are living and carrying around the pain of the 5-year-old.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's at times, I've done a lot of work to get through it. But when I think about that 5-year-old at times, and I think about kind of like the self-doubt and like insecurities that I still have to carry around at times because of those situations that I'm mad at, or I'm disappointed with, or I'm trying to resolve, it's like, I've never been shy about looking at myself, and my parents, because I was the problem, needed therapy. So I needed therapy. So I got therapy when I was a kid. I was like in middle school, and I met this great doctor, and Dr. Crisco was his name, and he was a psychologist. And he's actually the one that, like, he taught me a lot about myself. And he did it through, he knew that I had this like abusive dad. He knew that I really liked martial arts, and I had taken some martial arts, and him and he would like show up and he'd put his karate gi on for our therapy session. or he would, we would sword fight, and he would ask me questions while we were like fighting, and he just made me feel like I could actually do shit, So he was a really important piece in my life. And I've actually thought about many times, like, I need to reach out to him, just like let him know that.
What do you think the most impactful thing he did for you was?
Listened. Yeah. I mean, that was really it. You would ask a question, he would listen. I would say stuff to my parents and it would be like, yeah, right. Whatever. I'd sing in front of my dad, don't quit your day job. It's like, motherfucker, I'm like a good singer, but I stopped singing because you just kept saying that shit to me, When
I looked at you, when I looked at your story, when I hear you speak right now, I feel the weight that you're carrying. Like, in some sense, I feel through your words, you're able to show the ways in which you've been hurt, and it manifests in the way you speak. And like, we haven't even gotten to all the pain, that you've experienced, and that you are somehow able in this moment to present yourself and to talk there's so many people who have been through what you've been through and who would not be able to make it out alive, who would they would go to the depths of suicide, or they would be in a crazy place. And so the fact that you are here with me in these moments, being able to talk about that, dude, you have to like really sit back and appreciate the level of strength you have. Because we'll get into the like the ways in which you have created change for yourself and your family. But I just I feel called right here to acknowledge you in this moment as we're discussing some of this, the weight and the heaviness of it, because it's real shit, man. And you fucking like made it out. And that's something very few people can say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my brother didn't, I mean, like that drug addiction and pain that he was trying to put away, like I just found an alternate route, and it was by the grace of God that like, I'm not the one that died, and that his death gave me a new understanding of life, and that I wasn't going to waste it. And I mean, I wasn't perfect, I'm like, I've fucked up.
How could you not?
Yeah.
Dude, with what we're talking about here, like you weren't given love by your parents in any respect to sit there with them and have them come to your pole vaulting competition on your damn birthday. How could you not make mistakes? Right? And that's okay. Like, we're human. Making mistakes is human. And so what happened when you were 22 years old?
I mean, 22 is, when my brother passed. I was, at the time I was dating this girl, and my parents had they built this house, and, they out in the country, and me and my brother actually built most of it together. I actually dropped out of school to like help my brother build this house. And I was in the nursing program at Cardinal Stritch University, and he was struggling, and I knew he was struggling because like he would like tell me some shit, or he would ask me to like get him some drugs. And I mean, if it was like a social setting, I would have been like, yeah, cool, but like it's fucking Tuesday, like what are we talking about here? And that's when I realized like my brother has a problem. And when he got out of his second stint of rehab, he moved back in with my parents, and he was living in my bedroom that I was just like kind of in and out of, because most of the time I was staying at my girl's house because I didn't want to be in this toxic home. And yeah, I'm like 22 years old, and I'm just wrapping up school. I'm like trying to figure out fucking life, and I get a call at 5 a.m. for my sister, and she's just crying. And, you know, my brother's dead. And I get up, I get ready, I drive there, and the sheriffs don't let me in to see his body. Like, you know, they don't let me see it. And I leave, and I heard this ad on a radio, and it was for the toughest man, it's tough man competition. You know, come to Hal's Harley Davidson, you know, and it was sign up. And, you know, and this fight was like in 2 weeks, and I just drove straight there. And I went and signed up. And the promoter was sitting there, and he like looked at me, and he could probably tell just like the weight that I had on me. Mm-hmm. He's like, "You sure you're amateur?" He's like, "How'd you get that?" And he asked me like a couple times, you know, in different ways. I was like, "Yeah, man." I'm like, "I've never fought before. Martial artist or anything." I'm like, when I was a kid.
In 6th grade with Dr. Crisco.
He's like, "How'd you get that nose?" I'm like, "You want one that looks like it?" And he looked down. He's like, "Man, I'm just trying to make sure that like no pros like enter these fights." He's like, "You're just a really good in shape dude. Like just making sure, you know?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not, sign up." And 2 weeks later I fight. You know, it was kind of it was like the beginning. It's like, are you willing to cross this fucking line? Like, not do what normal people do. Like, you talked about this. You know, when my brother passed away, this moment came like instantly where it was like, time is short. Like, I don't have forever. My brother's 35 and he just fucking died and left 3 kids. I don't have forever. Right? And I always said that I was going to fight. I always said that I was like, my dream, like even through high school, I was like going to be in the WWF. I was told that I had a bad back. I had like this like disc, not a disc, but like this bone missing out of my back, and my vertebrae could like shift like in a certain way that like could be really bad. And I kind of like crossed that off my list and being a fireman. And I was like, well, I'm going to go to play soccer and go to nursing school, you know, like the fallback plan. And I was 22 and I was like, my brother's dead. I'm like, I could be dead tomorrow, you know? And the best way that I've explained it to people is that at that moment, like the shot clock in the corner of my eye, like appeared, and it just was like a number running, but I could never make it out. So I just knew that like, if this is my chance, like I have to take this shit. Like I have to take this, and I can't think about other people when I do this. You know, and it's like my family, they didn't want me to fight. I'm like, you aren't living my fucking life. You know, and that's when I realized like nobody is living my life. Nobody's going to do anything for me. There is nothing coming to save you. It's like, this is your moment. Save your fucking self. And like first step was me just getting up there and beating the shit out of somebody. Because even up to that point, I had never like really beat my dad's ass. You know, and I had never like had the resolve with my brother in ways that like I could tell him that like, you know, thank you. And I'm mad at you too for fucking up, you know. And there was like these things like you weren't supposed to fucking die. Like we were supposed to do shit together, you know, and you go through that. And you have to go through that inside, like these things that you never got to do. You know, my brother and my dad, they used to go on hunting trips and not invite me. So I just wanted to be involved. And so I created my own world. I stepped outside of my family. Like I just did me. I moved away and I just chased a dream, you know, and it panned out so far.
When you look back at those 5 years of you fighting, it almost, you described it as like a blur of like, because you go from not like your brother passing away, and then 5 years later, you're like, it seemed when you described it on previous podcasts, like, oh wow, what just happened? Like, like so much of it was a blur. You described tattoos that you didn't remember getting.
It was, yeah, I mean, the best way, like I've described this to somebody who, is like a shaman of sorts, and they, described it as what I describe, they call viewing, where I was in a state of viewing so many of my actions. And it's like being on autopilot, but the protocol. So you don't like fuck up where it matters the most. It's like you show up to work, you show up to the gym, you beat people up, you eat the foods that are on a list, you go to bed, and you do it again. And anybody that stands in way of that, it doesn't matter if you fuck them or fight them. They mean nothing. Right? And it was just like this like space that I was in where I was like a robot. I just, kept going. I mean, I come to learn a lot about it. I never got to see my brother's body. I had no closure. My parents had him cremated. Everybody else saw him before I did. It was another kind of like dig at like the lack of placement that I stayed, with my family, like where they put me in like, oh, what about Adam? Kind of like Home Alone's like Kevin. They're like on a fucking plane and they like, oh my God, but they never had that oh my God moment. Like my mom still doesn't even acknowledge the fact that they had the body cremated before I even got to like say goodbye. When like, that's like a really important fucking process of death is seeing the body, saying goodbye, having that closure. I mean, I thought I saw my brother for fucking years. I would like see people and I'd be like, and I have to remind myself that he was dead.
Because you didn't want to imagine him being...
No, because like, has anybody that you have been really close to died and you have not seen their body? Then it wouldn't make sense to you. Because there's a loop of closure. The body's dead. That person's dead. They're fucking blue. Nothing. Gone. Check. Right? It's like writing it down 3 fucking times, but it's burned in your brain forever. They're gone. When you don't get that, you literally don't completely understand that they're completely gone. You have to like really like remind yourself in a way. There'd be like times that I like caught myself thinking about my brother and I'd be like, I can't tell him. Like, he's not even here. Like, whoa, fuck.
How did that loop close? Has it closed at all?
Enough time. It's been 18 years since I've seen him. I don't even know what his face looks like totally. Don't even know what his voice sounds like. Things that you just kind of take for granted. I have a couple of pictures of him, but, they're just in a box somewhere. So I don't even know like what I would look for if I saw him on the street. Yeah, it's weird, when you lose somebody like that, because you get this lesson of mortality. You get this sneak peek at like the inevitable. And so many of us that don't experience death at a young age, we just live like a very carefree way. But when you realize that like when you start thinking about like each decision could be your last decision, it like torments you.
What way?
And the idea that you put so much weight on the decisions you make, even though they're fucking small, like where you're going to go to eat tonight, it just becomes like a bit of a thing, where it's, I don't want to waste time. And that's, something that has been a constant in everything I do. I've always looked at, how do I make training more efficient? How do I make food more efficient? How do I make, like everything? I mean, at one point I've literally timed everything I did for months. I bought a watch and started timing everything I did, conversations, food, sex, like it didn't fucking matter. I just hit the start button. And when I got done, I hit stop and I go, 32 minutes and 46 seconds. All right. And I would like acknowledge it's like time, and I'd be like, okay, like that wasn't worth my time. And I started realizing like things like that, and I got better at my time, and therefore I was able to do more and effectively look like Adam's doing so many fucking things. How is he doing so many things? I'm, modeling in New York. I'm running a gym. I'm raising a family, and it was just me just kind of being reminded that at any moment, I could be gone. This will all still be here, but I won't be here. And what impact are you going to have on this when you walk away?
Were you doing all those things so that you could find the love that your parents didn't give you?
What things exactly?
The modeling,
like validation, acceptance.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm sure. I mean, I've always had a weird body image issue. I'm like the last person at a party to take his shirt off, like a pool party. It's always been a weird thing with me. So there may have been something with like me trying to validate my body image, in certain ways, feel appreciation. I think like so much of, and I've said this out loud, like the speed at which I did things towards the end of my dad's life when he was diagnosed with cancer was so that I could show him that my way works too. Because it was always his way. And my first fight, he came back on the second night and came into the back room and like started shit with me about fucking fighting and it being fucking stupid. And, he's like, I just lost one son. I'm not going to lose another. I'm like, I'm in a fucking boxing ring. I'm like, I'm going to protect myself. A little belief in me will go a long fucking way. And then I beat the shit out of the next person after beating the shit out of the first fucking person. It's like, these people aren't lasting 15 seconds in this ring with me. Like, what are you talking about? And I had to have security remove my dad from the backstage, and that was the last fight that they ever fucking watched. They literally just came to call me a fucking idiot and I shouldn't be fighting.
But then how did it feel to overhear your dad talk to the nurses about how proud he was of you?
Man, what a moment. Yeah. I mean, that was, without that, I would have thought my dad had no heart at all. When it came to me, I would have thought that it was all just like I was a problem the whole time, but I saw him. He got excited for me. Like when he saw me opening up a new space or adding new equipment, he would, send me a message. Oh, there's a new gym opening up down the street from you. It's called Planet Fitness, I think. It's a new franchise. It's got a lot of money back in it. You're gonna have to really, you're gonna have to do whatever you do. I got it, Dad. And I remember that conversation was like it was yesterday, and he would like come and help do like maintenance work at the gyms, and I kind of like put him in that position after he retired so I could kind of force him to like see me as like his superior because I'm literally paying him. So therefore, any conversation we have, there would be like a certain level of respect. And if there wasn't, I lit him up. I'd be like, don't you fucking talk to me like that. I'm like, if you're going to talk to me like that, get the fuck out of my gym. I'm like, don't come back here. It's like, this is my place. I'm like, you're going to talk, you did that one time. And it was like, you got it. I'm just retired from fighting. I'm 225 pounds with a 19.5-inch neck. And you're going to talk to me like I'm like a 8-year-old little kid that you're going to beat up if I don't listen to you. You're obviously fucking delusional. And that same mindset was obviously you for the last 30 years. So I'm going to let a lot of what you did go for my own self because clearly you were just fucked up. Like if you even think talking to me like that makes even sense, like I would kill you right now. He never really understood, but he at least changed the way he talked to me, once once the gym was moving and, you know, saw me do my thing. You know what I mean? How could you deny it? I'm like on the fucking news at least once a week, you know, being like the health correspondent of my city. You know, I'm being casted by crazy New York shit. I'm like filming a fucking movie. You know, I mean, there's all these things. And it's just, you told me my looks weren't going to get me far. You know, you told me this, you told me that. You know, I'm not saying my looks got me that far, but like, fuck, they didn't hurt, you know? So it was a lot about, you know, wanting to hear my dad say that. It was like the things I did, like just hoping that one of the things I fucking did would impress him enough to realize that I'm not a fuck up.
How did you go down and choose the path of helping people rather than the path of hurting yourself with so much pain?
Through pain comes discovery. And I fought because I felt nothing. So I fought until I felt something. And when my shoulder exploded, it was the craziest amount of pain I had ever felt. It was the most mentally jarring. I mean, you could have been getting a blowjob from a supermodel and you would fucking be like, ah, you know, like, what else? Like, fuck. Like, everything needs to stop now. And it was bad. It like took my whole life and put it into perspective because it was an emotional release. All of that pain was just locked in my shoulder because the minute when my brother died, less than 2 weeks later, I did this for the first time. And I sat there and I held that fucking arm like that for the next 7 years, ready to punch anybody.
For those listening, your shoulders up and you're ready. You're in the fist position.
I'm in the boxer's position, right? Like, which it's like your shoulder gets up a little bit because you get that, you know, you get that jaw protection with the shoulder on the roll, you know, so you kind of do this to like guard yourself from getting punched. So it's like I just had all this tension in my left shoulder and I suplexed somebody and it just fucking explodes. And when it exploded, it hurt, but it was more like I felt everything. It was like everything, everywhere, all at once, right? And it was just like, boom, that is what it feels like when your brother dies.
Wow. So 5 years after he actually dies, you feel his death for the first time.
Yeah, dude, I'm like literally just crying on the mat. And everybody's like, does it hurt that bad? Like, oh my God, like, dude, I've never seen it. And I'm like, no, man. I'm like, I was trying to explain it. I'm like, there's just so much going on in here. And that's actually, I had like an intuitive thought at the time that wasn't even really talked about, or I don't even believe discovered as it is now, is that like emotion is held in your tissue. Right. And that wasn't even something that was talked about, or I believe discovered at that time, but I had an intuitive feeling that my body was holding all that pain in a place for me to like store it, like change in a pocket. And one day I was going to make that fucking phone call. And it was just like, boom, now you're talking to all your feelings. And I did what any person would do. I got the fuck out of there. Well, at least I did. I did exactly what I would do. I don't know what anybody else would do. I went and slinged my arm up, threw some ice on it, and kept training. Because I was like, no, I'm not ready to feel anything. And a couple weeks later, I was like, feeling is the only thing I can do. And I was like trying to fight it. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to fight this so hard that I'm literally going to move from Minnesota to California and go train with this badass team that I train with when I get ready for fights, who are just like a team of killers. And I'm just going to go there. And I just didn't want it. And a couple months later, I find myself working at Cheesecake Factory and personal training and modeling and doing a TV commercial for an ab machine, you know, acting as a professional fighter. You know, I'm like, I'm in fucking Hollywood, you know, and that was like a whole nother chapter began. And that was when I then moved home because my dad got diagnosed with cancer. I opened up the gym and did all those things.
At what point do you start training people like Ray Lewis and Klaus?
Get back real quick too.
Yeah, please.
Because you wanted a very specific question answered. Like, why did I choose to help people? And that was because I got hurt. I was I was always the smartest person in the room when it came to fucking training. Always. And I let other people dictate what I would do with my body because they were my coaches. But like, they didn't know dick about weight training. They were wrestling coaches. They didn't know shit about physiology. I took that and I was like, I'm not only going to heal myself and learn how to get my shoulder better and stronger, but I am going to teach others from the same knowledge that I gained from this, because I know that I belong in the position of power when it comes to training somebody over these people that are doing it. These dog and pony fucking trainers that don't know the difference between hyperextension, you know, and somebody's abs being engaged in a fucking squat, like all these, you know, and it's just biomechanics. Everybody's like off, and I'm seeing this happening, and I'm like, I can do better. So I had always been around helping people. I helped my little brother who was paralyzed, you know, changing trachs, heart leads. I'm helping my parents. Like, why am I doing all this fucking shit around the house? Like, you do this shit around the house. You know what kids are supposed to be fucking doing? They're supposed to be educating, socializing, developing skills, not fucking cleaning their bedroom all the time and being told to take care of their little brother, right? Like, that's your responsibility. Don't put that shit on a kid, you know? And I tell my sister, my sister did that for way too long. She put all that responsibility on her older daughter, and now her older daughter and her younger daughter, they have fucking no relationship. They fight all the time, toxicity. And I'm just like, that is not the position of like your other children to like those children, you know, or to parent those children. I mean,
yeah. So like, do you feel like you and your children have love for each other?
Oh man,
like
crazy amount,
crazy love, right?
Yeah.
From what I've heard on previous podcasts.
Yeah.
So why is that the case when all signs would indicate that it wouldn't be the case?
Yeah, man, because I've never been one to follow in any of my family's footsteps. Instead of the to-dos, I always had the list of two not to-dos, right? It was like, do not do that. Do not do this. Do not do this. Do not do this. Take care of the downside, and the upside will take care of itself. If I don't talk to my kids in a belittling way, or if I don't yell at them, if I don't do these things, everything else I do will be fucking amazing, right? And my kids have maybe heard me yell one time, right? I've never touched my kids like that. I've never spanked them. I've never like any of that kind of shit. I've never needed to. I count 3, 2, and I put a certain amount of energy out, you know, like just like my presence. So it's like when I'm speaking and I'm saying 3, 2, whatever I told them to fucking start doing, they're doing at 1. And they know, because I always tell them, I hope you know that I'm making you do this because I love you. And it's important that you understand how to take care of yourself, right? Like, I always end anything that I tell them with if they have some kind of like pushback, because they're still growing kids.
They're 8 and 9, right?
Yep. About to be 10 and 8. Yeah. But yeah, they're very close in age. They're 15 months apart. So they're always one behind the next. So it's going to be 10, 9, you know? So, but yeah, it's always been, I've always tried to speak to them respectfully. You know, I try to just change, like, hey, we could still be talking about this, but let's just change the verbiage a little bit so that my kids aren't hearing certain words, you know, of whatever we're talking about, you know, political issues. Hey, you know what though? We're still going to talk about it. Like, my kids have their own fucking opinions on presidents, right? Like, they do, you know, and they have, when I ask them why, they have logical reasons of why. They're not regurgitating something that they just heard. I'll be like, well, give me 3 reasons why you don't like that person. Be like, 1, this, 2, this, and 3, this, and 4, you don't like them, you know, or whatever. And I'm like, well, don't do that. I'm like, you should make up your own mind. And they're like, you know, and my daughter, she likes the Starbucks ice green tea. And she's like, what, Dad? I just like Starbucks. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me right now?
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, exactly. 3, 2. Okay, I like strong coffee. But I'm like, are you know, and I've like, well, I'm like, I understand that. And it's totally okay for you to like that. You know, it's also like if they're crying, like it's okay for you to cry, but it's important to understand why you're crying and what it is that you're crying about. Right. And like, these are things that are tools that I'm just going to keep on trying to give my kids, because like, I want them to be strong, independent women that want me to be around, don't need me to be around. Just like all my clients that I've ever had in my life. I want you to want me around, not need me.
Yeah. A couple of things. One is that you used the negative role model of your parents as like, okay, this is what I don't want to do. And because I have not all encompassing, obviously you take parts of your parents that you enjoy, and that you want to pass down, but you were able to look at a role model and be like, this is not what I want in these ways. And therefore, because I have the opposite, I can then actually do something positive with it, which I think a lot of people are forced with negative situations and don't think about how is this a role model in some way. And you did.
Yeah.
And so that's really cool.
So I think if I, you know, a chapter in my book would be like, find the silver lining, right? Because I do believe it's everywhere. I do truly believe there is a silver lining in every fucking situation. So you could give me the most grotesque one and I would find a way to see it like, well, now we do know this though. And because we know this will happen, you know?
What's contributed to the optimistic mindset more than anything?
Because if you go the other way, it's just so fucking dark. And I went down that way for a minute, you know?
What took you out of that?
Knowing that no matter how hard you hit somebody out of anger, somebody can hit you harder back. So when you start stepping in the rings with real fighters and you realize that anger solves nothing, you're like, got it. Anger is like a fucking rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it ain't getting you anywhere. You know, and that's what I was leading with was anger and athleticism. You know, and it's like, bing, 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 I win again. You know, and then you go bing, bing, bing to like Brock Lesnar and it's like boom, boom, boom. And you're on the fucking mat, you know, and that was my life. I mean, I moved up to Minnesota. I was training with Matt Hughes and Sean Shirk and Brock Lesnar. I mean, like all these fucking huge names, you know, of fighting at the time. And I learned a valuable lesson and I started experimenting, you know, young with like psychedelics. Not young, but, you know, I was 24, 25. You know, trying psychedelics and using mushrooms. I was smoking weed. I was hanging out with this dude in Minnesota that was like in this hip hop culture. And he was like a super like conscious individual. And I just had some good people around me, even though every once in a while I'd step out of that robot stage and I'd go like socialize, you know, and it would be like, great, got that. Now I don't need to do this for a couple of weeks again, you know? And yeah, it was some good people on the way that I think, you know, just a lot of bad shit that just kept happening that you just eventually have to say, like, if I don't look at this with a positive light, there's just going to be nothing but darkness.
Then you didn't want to get enveloped by it.
Yeah. I mean, who the fuck wants to live there? I mean, some people like, I guess, but not me. You know, I mean, I may have some, you know, teeth rearranged from my fight days, but like I love smiling. You know, it's like it is something that feels fucking good. I have so many comments on my Instagram of like, you're always smiling. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm smiling right now. There's a lot of bad shit going on. Like there's all these things happening and I'm still just gotta keep moving.
Yeah. Going back to your children choosing Starbucks in some sense over your own coffee. Does that feel in a similar way to your parents choosing to not value you or look at you in some way? Is there a parallel there of like that same feeling of like, why can't you choose me?
Oh, no, not anyway. My daughter Azalea doesn't like coffee, but my daughter Arrow does. And Arrow actually will ask us for a glass of morning fix. But I do it kind of like a vanilla steamer and I give her like just half of one and I mix it with milk. She just loves the flavor. And then Azalea actually just had her first cup and she actually really liked it. I don't encourage them to drink it because they're young and they, you know, shouldn't be exposed to, too much caffeine on a regular basis. I mean, a soda has like 50 or 60 milligrams of caffeine. So that's about what I let them have at the most. And usually they don't even finish the whole cup. They get focused on something and like walk away and start doing shit. I'm like, it's working. But my daughters have a lot of pride in strong coffee. I mean, they've worked a lot of hours for strong coffee. Like, I have video of my daughter. There was at the time we were fulfilling from our house, and 2,000 square foot house, and like 1,200 square foot of it is converted into like storage. It's just boxes and packing tables and shit, right? And we figured out this problem that our bags weren't sealed at the manufacturer, so we had like a couple thousand bags that weren't sealed. So I had this video of my daughter and my wife taking bags out of the boxes and shaking them, and then putting them under a heat sealer, and and my daughter putting it back in the box, and she's shaking. I mean, she doesn't even know what she's doing, and she's doing it. She's 4 years old, and I have incredible memories. I mean, of Arrow sitting at, the Austin TFX. It's this CrossFit event here. And she sat there and served at the cash register for 4 or 5 hours and refused to get down from the register. And she's done that numerous times. We were on a road trip. My wife, my kids, were all living out of the van, traveling through Colorado. And we crashed the Aspen Food and Wine Show. So we just went and set up a table in front of Aviator Nation. And I happen to know the woman who founded Aviator Nation. And I was like, hey, can I just set up a coffee table in front of your shop? All these other people are paying like $20,000, $30,000 to have their brands activated there on that street. But because I know the people who own Aviator Nation, I'm like, boom. And my daughters, I forgot what, I think it was Father's Day. Yeah, it was Father's Day. So they refused to let me serve 1 cup of coffee. And they were having, my daughter's like, this one's sweet and creamy. It's really good. It's got collagen for your skin. And she touches her face. It does like skin. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. So I think that my daughter Azalea likes to get a little rise out of me, and I'll feed into it every once in a while with the Starbucks thing, and I'll be like, what? You want to walk home? And she's like, Dad, I could like my own stuff. And I'm like, yes, you can.
Well, it sounds like they got the work ethic from you in some respect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my daughter really impressed me this last school year. I mean, they both were on the honor roll, but my daughter Azalea, and I'm sure my daughter Arrow next year when she has this as a part of her class will crush it. But my daughter Azalea created a business plan for these characters called Da Mushroom, and they're like sock stuffed animals. And she did this whole like cool like mushroom, art board for like an advertisement. And she was selling them at this like thing, and she sold out. And it was all her idea. And she like wants to create this like world where like the mushroom is like this like stuffed animal in this whole world. And it's really cute. And her friends like love it. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, let's do it. So we're trying to figure out a way to maybe get some manufactured, or, and we've talked about starting a supplement company, like a kid's supplement. Like they were really into it. They wanted to flavor like a drink, and both of them have taken a massive fascination to Canva because they see me making ads and doing things on it all the time. Because, we're a small company. So it's like, I still do all that shit. So they'll see me doing that, and they're like, Dad, can I do one? So my daughters are like making ads for strong coffee.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're sitting there, and pretty funny ones too, where I'm like, I think I might just do like a video where it's like their green screen. I'd be like, I asked my kids to make some ads for me, and this is what they did. So I just sat and drank some coffee and watched them do work for me. What do you think? Like kind of like
in a world of AI,
yeah,
in a world of like people, you don't know where it's coming from. When you have children creating something, it's like a layer of truth almost, and of humanity.
Yeah.
That I think really would do well.
Yeah. It's cute. Some of the stuff that they create has kind of been like AI looking. It's like a cat, like looking over the bag, and then like triangles in the background that are like moving. And it's got this kind of AI, cartoons today are very different than when I grew up. Cartoons were people, right? And like superheroes, people more so. Ren and Stimpy, was like around, or like Looney Tunes, obviously, but like the new cartoons, man, they are just fucking weird. And they're funny weird though, like Oddballs and like some of these odd, unusual cartoons where their brains are just like seeing everything and, seeing so many different random things that their thoughts seem so fucking random. But if you were to put it in front of another kid, they're like, that's so cool, and kids know cool. I mean, personally, I think they do. Like, they have like a certain level of eye for natural, like, aesthetics. They understand things.
Because they're not filtered by what society has told you is cool or what other people, they don't have other people's perspectives on them.
Totally. Well, I think that's where that, do you see about that like 6-year-old that like makes dresses?
No.
Yeah, he sold like multiple dresses for like thousands of dollars. And he just like comes up with these elaborate and crazy, beautiful dress designs. And he says that he's, forget who he says he is, like reincarnated, but he like literally says that to his parents.
Wow.
Yeah, I forget who it is, but it's like a major dressmaker that died. I don't know. But
do you believe in reincarnations?
I would like to. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a beautiful thought. I don't really know what to believe. I think that, do good by people you love around you and be remembered here, and hope that whatever happens here takes you to where you are supposed to go after here. I mean, the idea that I could come back as like my daughter's puppy would be amazing. If I knew who I was, but I was stuck in a puppy's body, I also might be maddening. Maybe that's why dogs die so young. Like, they don't live so long. They're just like, no, get me out of this fucking thing. Dogs are just killing themselves.
Switching gears here.
Yep.
On the Shortness of Life by Seneca, Neil Strauss gives you that book.
Yes.
Why was that impactful?
Well, because my words were some renowned philosopher's words without even knowing. And I was like, I am that fucking guy. Like, I'm that guy that has those thoughts, that thinks about those things so deeply that when I'm sitting them regurgitating them to one of the top authors in the world, he's like, you sound exactly like Seneca. Have you heard of The Shortness of Time? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I read, this may get me points or may not get me points. I stopped reading books a long time ago. And I read that Einstein didn't read other people's shit because he didn't want the fear of other people's ideas to encroach on his. So my philosophy was like, well, how am I going to have a original idea if I have everybody else's ideas in my head? So I have read pieces of books to understand the levers of mechanics of certain situations, or I've hop on Google and I research an intuitive thought to understand where the science lies. I've done a lot of that, but sitting there and just reading somebody's system and philosophies has never really been something that I've ever attached myself to. I'm like, I know, I know that knowledge is gained from other people's experiences, but if you have too much of somebody else's experiences in your mind and not your own, then you are more of someone else than you are of yourself.
I say turn off the podcast and listen to yourself all the time. But on that point about the time piece of it,
yeah,
it was because you were carrying a watch around.
I was carrying a watch. So yeah, so the story I told Neil is like, look, like when my brother died, I had this intuitive thought, and I had this saying that came with it. It was called "Earn the Day." It is called "Earn the Day," and it's tattooed on my finger.
Kind of wore off.
It's wore off
because you earned too many days.
Because I earned way too many motherfucking days. That's right. And my belief is that you are guaranteed two things in life: the day you're born and the day you die. Everything else everything in between you have to earn, right? So they're all decisions, they're all actions that take you to the next moment that either give you the food or give you famish. It's like, it's all that. And when that thought came into mind, I was like head looping these like quotes, like in my mind, like, how can you account for time when you don't know how much you are spending? When in fact, if I asked you how much money is in your bank account, you could tell me down to the hundreds, but you couldn't tell me down to the minutes, a commodity in which you can never exchange up for how long we've actually been talking right now without looking at the screen, right? Your concept of time is broken, and time is not just a construct because we only have so much of it, right? It's like we only can do so much in the time that we have. So we have to be constructive. We have to think and apply the knowledge of like time and efficiency and energy, in all the things that we do. I'm like, well, nobody's doing that really. Like people, like they fill out a schedule and they're like, there's my 8 hours, but nobody's saying to themselves, that was 20 seconds too long. Whatever it is. So then people start saying things. I'll make time for that. Well, I'm a person who loves semantics. So you can make time, huh? Please show me how. Do you have a time machine? Maybe an oven that like creates time now? You bake it. How do you make your time? You can take time from things that don't matter to make time for things that do. You can't just fucking make up time. Smoked a J before we came in. Throat's just a little charry. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, so you can't make time. You can only take time from things that don't. Well, if you don't know where you're spending that time, then how can you take it? So it was really just understanding. So I started wearing a watch with everything. It was literally the first check I got owning the gym, or the first payment. I went and ran to the sneaker shop that I loved, and they had these Casio G-Shocks that were like really dope. And I was like, I'll take that one. And I didn't take it off for 3 years. Not even like, I got married with it on, I think. Like I just did not take it off for 3 years.
An important piece of time is knowing where to spend it, right?
Yeah.
You could be tracking everything, and you have a stopwatch for every moment. But if your general direction isn't in a place where you are excited to go, it won't even matter. So before you track everything, I feel like you need to understand what it is you want.
Yeah.
How do you go about doing that?
By understanding what kind of life you want to live. I knew very specifically that I wanted to be able to wear shorts and a t-shirt wherever I went. I knew that I didn't want to have to live anywhere for whatever I did, like a specific spot. There was these things that I knew that my perfect career, job, whatever, would allow. And if there isn't a place for it, then I will create that place. I mean, I had the perfect job to those standards, but I hit the glass ceiling. I was training people for $200 an hour in LA, training the best of the best. And I was like, this is fun, but I'm not helping as many people as I could help. I'm helping 6 people, right? And depending on what time of year, it could be 6 entitled assholes who can just afford me. They're not people that I even want to be around. I got to be around some incredible people that changed things, really incredible entrepreneurs, that started massive companies, that did great things, incredible athletes. But when it all came down to it, it wasn't about the money. It was about the lack of time that I could spend with my children and be at home with making this money, and the limited amount of people that I was helping within that time, where it's like I'm training people. I was only training like 4 hours a day, but it would be like an 8-hour day with fucking driving around and travel and shit. I was like, this isn't bullshit. Like, this isn't for me. And I had, once tried, doing strong coffee before, and, in 2013, and there was just a lot that happened, around that time. And I shut it down, and I was seeing a lot of other people that, like, in my opinion, had less, like, didn't have a good product, didn't have my story, didn't have my fucking drive, like, didn't have an eye for a brand, you know? And I was like, I can do better. I can do better. I could do better than these people. I can create something amazing. And the thing is like, I had already created it. It was sitting in my kitchen every morning, right? It was this, I would brew organic coffee. I'd put this collagen. I put this MCT. I put this sodium. I'd do this nootropic, this adaptogen. Fucking 20 minutes later, I'd have this crazy cup of coffee that costed $7 or some shit. And I just simplify that into an instant formula that you could just put into water. And one of those great clients invested. And
tell the story about 4 a.m.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny because I got to send Ben. I'll send Ben this one because he's probably never actually heard me tell the story in public. So I had this idea when I first started sampling strong coffee, is that at the time I was emceeing at the Fit Expo, like the big fit shows that are all throughout California. And I just got back from like Sacramento show, which is like a 5-hour drive from like Sacramento to LA. I got in at like 10 o'clock at night, and I had Ben at 5 a.m. the next day. And I get to his house, and he answers the door, and he's like rubbing the sleep out of his eyes, and the dude's standing there in his underwear and a t-shirt, and he's like, "Oh, hey man, like, it's good to meet you." And I'm like, "Oh dude, it's so good to meet you too," and he's like, "Oh man, it's so early," and I'm like, "Yeah, it is," and Ben was like trying to like change his life, like get up, going to early routine, like start, and I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm glad to meet you." I'm like, "Where are we going to train?" He's like, "Hey, you want some coffee?" He's like, "Oh, fuck, I don't have any coffee." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool, man." I'm like, "I actually got this coffee, and I explained what was kind of in it. I'm like, "But it's not like normal coffee, He's like, "It sounds amazing, right? We live in this guy's in Beverly Hills. Of course, collagen, organic, MCT, nootropic coffee sounds amazing. Like, everybody's like doing this, right?" So I was like, "Cool, man. I'll go grab it from the car. You put on some pants, and we'll get this party started, And I made him some coffee. He like enjoyed the coffee. His wife comes down, enjoys the coffee. I don't think I really trained him that much that day. Like, we like talked about the coffee. I left. He's like, "Yo, how do I get more of this coffee?" There is no more coffee. He's like, "Well, that's a problem." Yes, it is. And he's like, "Well, how do we make more?" And I was like, "Well, I start the company, And he was like, "Well, how much?" I was like, "Well, what do you mean how much?" He's like, "Well, how much would it be to start the company?" I was like, "I mean, at least like $140,000. I just like threw out a fucking number,
Where'd you get that number from?
Because I was willing to give up 10% for 140 because I was saying that my company in my head was worth 1.4 million.
Where'd you get that from?
Because I knew my idea was at least a $1 million idea, and I think I'm at least worth 400,000.
I love how simple it is.
Yeah, like, self-valuing. It's all bullshit anyways. But like, I mean,
but why not 10 million? Why not 100?
And I could have, and I should have, right? Because that's what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Right. Because I could have shown market exposure, all these different things. I'm a fucking trainer.
Right.
And before this, I'm a union electrician.
Right.
I'm not a polo shirt wearing, like, top Big Ten fucking Ivy League school having, "There's a hole in the market space, says this analytical data. Well, let's reverse engineer that pricing structure to fit a product market fit that will accelerate growth." Like, I know that shit all now, but I didn't know that then.
What year is this around?
5.5 years ago, 2017. I didn't know any of that shit. I gave away way too much of my company for money, pieces of my company for dollars as I've done small seed raises. But you know what? Fuck it. This ain't my last thing. It's like, this isn't a stop. This is, I said this in a podcast in this very room, is like, there have been a lot of stops on the way. I've had 32 jobs when I stopped counting, and I've had at least probably 5 or 6 jobs since then in the grand sense of things, And when I look at like what I've done with all that knowledge and all those jobs and all this and these transitions, strong coffee, man, how the fuck did I get here? How did I go from being a union electrician trainer, gym owner, to owning a multi-million-dollar globally in Whole Foods coffee company, you know, it has been fucking bumps and bruises, and we are dealing with massive, you know, pains right now with like things with Whole Foods that have been going on. But ultimately, it's just like, wow, you know, all those jobs now make sense to me. Because like the things that I'm able to creatively problem solve that a polo shirt wearing Ivy League Big Ten school jackass would not be able to figure out, because they're stuck in that academic structure and way of thinking, that I'm like creative, right? Because like all I've ever had is creative problem solving, right? Like I'm smart, but like my creativity has always been the thing that got me to the next spot. I didn't just happen to end up on our news. You know, it was like, I'm pitching ideas. You know, I've been that guy. Like when I was a fighter, I was pitching sponsorships. You know, I was doing all that stuff. And the business was me just starting a business. Like I didn't see it as a big deal. Everybody's like, dude, this is amazing. You're starting a business. I'm like, I did it in like 3 months. I mean, I had like a working formula and an investment in 3 months, you know, and it was, for me, it was just, it felt like light work, where I've seen other people struggle and take almost 2 years just to start a company.
Well, it was also like all those jobs and all that experience.
Exactly.
And that was manifested, and all those connections and all that knowledge of fighting and all the knowledge of training. And then here's a check because, well, you had built up all that experience, but it just didn't seem like it in that moment because you were playing with life.
Yeah, for sure. And I rolled the fucking dice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's been incredible. I mean, I could have made way more money staying as a trainer this whole time. Way more money, right? Like personally. But building a brand and a thing that people believe in that helps them is so fucking rewarding. Like Caleb and I, you know, dude off camera right here that, you know, shout out to Caleb. He is like, him and I see it the same way. We love serving coffee. Doesn't matter how much money I make a year now at this point, or what Strong Coffee is doing. I am out on the weekends serving coffee, or on the weekdays at a gym, because I love it. I like putting coffee in some fucking unassuming person's hand that didn't know they were getting coffee that morning, and seeing the surprise and delight in their face, and then know that they could actually make this very thing at home and that it's healthy for them. That to me is, you know, what really gets me hard. You know? What movie is that from? Step Brothers. Yeah, you know what really gets me hard? Yeah, exactly. That's what gets me hard, serving coffee.
Talk about the person who you had hired for emails who didn't have that same mission.
Yeah.
Not to throw anyone under the bus.
No. We were just with him this morning. He's a great person.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, he saw it differently, and he doesn't want to be tied down to a regular job. He now started a great emailing company. He still does our emails. You know, I like effectively, like it's exactly what he wanted. Yeah. And it's great for me because then I don't feel like you have to, right? But if you are part of like our actual motherfucking team, like you're getting the Christmas bonus and you're getting the, you know, you're hanging out with us doing the things, you need to be serving coffee. Because if you don't put your finger on the pulse, you don't know who the fuck we're talking to. You don't know where this brand is going, right? Because we have to watch the culture. Because like that's how you create a brand. That's why people don't create brands. They just sell products. That's why there is no longevity to so many of these companies. Because they just sell products. They get to like, whatever, tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. But then whatever trend they jumped on falls to the wayside. And they have no brand that anybody gives a shit about because they were just a product that met that time and that trend and that need. Where what I want to create and what I have created is a thing that people wear. That is the ultimate test, I believe, is do people just wake up and choose one of your fucking hats this morning when they're walking out the door? Are they rocking your t-shirt at the new gym that they want to go check out because they want to look extra fly when they take their Instagram posts? That is what the culture wants, right? They want to feel good in what they believe in. They don't just want to pour something in a shaker and walk out the door. They want to believe in the person that's making it, the people that are behind it, and what the brand stands for. Strong doesn't even stand for how much fucking weight you can lift. It's about striving to reach our natural greatness. So anybody out there that's like, yo, I want to be fucking great. Well, so does everybody at Strong Coffee, right? It's like literally the barrier of entry. Do you want to be great? Come the fuck on in.
How has your definition of greatness changed throughout your life?
I don't know if it has.
It's always stayed the same.
Yeah.
What does greatness mean to you?
To do what you love and give it your best. Doesn't matter if you ever are the best. It's that you did your best. And only you fucking know that, right? So it's like, it's all about, well, it kind of just jumps back to the time and leaving it all on the table, right? That's what greatness is. Like if I see somebody out there just giving it, that person is great. Like they are finding it. They're tapped into it. You know, it is that moment that somebody decides to not give up on what it is that they love and they just push harder. That's greatness, right? Mediocrity is rampant. There's no vaccine for it, right?
Dude, you are an inspiration. Thank you so much for coming here, for giving your heart, for living the way you do. Like, it is rare to see and meet somebody who has gone through so much and is able to live and tell the tale on the other side and is still working every day to get better. And I'm so excited to try Strong Coffee and start rocking some gear, because what you stand for is something I really appreciate. And I like to end these podcasts with a challenge. A challenge I ask the guests for to point the audience to do something with the time that they've spent with this episode. Do you have a challenge that comes to mind to leave somebody with who's on the other side?
For the same time that they put into this episode, they should do a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Man, just go for a walk. Fucking love yourself. Like, leave your phone at home. You know, nobody's got to see what you do. You know, just, get in nature and just get lost, because it feels amazing.
That's a great challenge. I love that. Adam, where can we send people to connect with you further?
You can find me at Von Rothfelder on Instagram or at Strong Coffee Company. You'll find my hilarious musings and memes up there. Me and Caleb both run it, so don't send me any sexy DMs. He's the one that gets them, or do, or don't. No, he's got a girlfriend. Not teammate. Yeah.
You're throwing him up to the phone.
He's like, you shut the fuck up. No, just kidding. Check us out at Strong Coffee Company, strongcoffeecompany.com. The company is important because it's what you keep, and those around you make you who you are, strong.
Beautifully, beautifully said. Thank you so much, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.